We got a pop quiz for you this morning on the Elias Macko Show. What company has the most revenue in the video streaming business? I think you'd all say, oh, it's got to be Netflix, right? Well, lo and behold, there's a company that's on pace to beat Netflix when it comes to revenue, all thanks to streaming video. And it is YouTube. And their progress on this front, bringing in money, boy, for a company that doesn't charge for subscriptions, all they do is advertising. And I know they do have some subscription products. We'll get into that probably. But they are focused on advertising, and they're bringing in the big bucks. When I saw this story, I said, I know who we got to talk to. We got to talk to Ashkan Karbafarushian. He's the founder of Watch Mojo, a mega huge YouTube channel based right here in Montreal. Ash, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Was this surprising for you when you saw that YouTube is on the cusp of overtaking Netflix in revenue?
No, but you got to go back in 2006, right before Google bought YouTube. I said that YouTube was probably the most promising player in the media landscape. In 2011, I called YouTube's acquisition by Google the number one best media M&A, merger and acquisition deal of all time. In 2012, when the media world was shunning YouTube, I said that YouTube had moved on from being the pariah to the belle of the ball. And I think, what you're seeing now is Main Street coming to the realization that YouTube has totally redrawn the landscape in its favor.
Pariah to belle of the ball. I love how you put that. What changed, Ash? What changed where YouTube was seen as low-class, trashy content to where YouTube is seen as a go-to place to be entertained?
Well, I think some of that trashy content perception had to do with traditional media not loving YouTube's existence. At the end of the day, YouTube was a disruptor, and sure, it had its roots in piracy. But very quickly, I think YouTube embraced, user-uploaded content, and then, it wasn't necessarily that rights holders loved the idea of putting their content on YouTube, but they realized that if they were out of sight, they would be out of mind. I've always said that in many ways, Watch Mojo capitalized on the vacuum that was created by traditional media companies like Viacom. When Viacom, who owns MTV and VH1, once they weren't putting, let's say, their lists on YouTube, that certainly created an opportunity. And I think slowly but surely over the years, viewership and users had embraced YouTube, and it had effectively replaced television. And I think there's always a trailing effect, So the marketers were slow to embrace it, but eventually they follow audiences, so they had to embrace it. And then I think what's happened now is just more traditional media company, whether it's Disney, Viacom itself, and many others, who kind of realize like YouTube is a frenemy and more an ally. So it's just kind of like the way media has always evolved, which is ad dollars follow audiences.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of those ad dollars, it was always a knock against TV. There's too many commercials on TV. Well, I'm hearing that same knock now about YouTube, right? And sometimes when I open up their app, especially on mobile, I find on mobile I'm getting hit hard when it comes to advertising. I open up their app and it's like, 2 pre-roll ads and another ad that they'd like me to watch that I can skip that's 60 seconds long. Has it changed? Has the paradigm there where people would not watch ads on the internet, has that changed? Have consumers said, okay, we'll take it?
Yes, but I think it's more nuanced. I think YouTube, when they pioneered skippable ads, it was called TrueView, that was, a game changer because it put the power in the consumer hands where they could skip an ad. But by doing that, they actually conditioned marketers to create shorter ads and ads that, like the content, would be somewhat engaging. So I think on one side of the line of scrimmage, you've just seen YouTube rewrite the rules of advertising where all of a sudden it's not just taking a long 30-second ad and putting it on, the web. But on the other side of the equation, I think viewers are effectively conditioning YouTube. So if you have a tendency maybe to sit through, let's say you'll see a 15-second ad and you will skip that, fine, but then you might be served up a much shorter 6-second ad, and that, by the time you look for the skip button, you may just kind of let it go. So that's how you keep actually conditioning YouTube to serve you ads based on your interests. A little anecdotal, I grew up in Canada, but I was born in Iran. So my mom, who is here, She's like, hey, it's very funny because I see a lot of Persian ads before your content. How come? I'm like, well, dear mother, maybe you've been watching some channels that have content that is in Farsi, and that is why YouTube is serving you those ads, because they realize you speak Farsi. And she was like, oh, my God, mind blown, right? But that's the power of the platform. Yeah. It's really, really personalized, but it's a mirror. So the ads that you are served and the content that you are served is a reflection of your viewership.
We're with Ash Karbafrushian, the founder of Watch Mojo, one of YouTube's monster channels, of course, built here in Montreal. Ash, what's the current total? How many subscribers does Watch Mojo have across its various channels?
On the various channels on YouTube, we're about 45 million, but if you include our reach on Snap, TikTok, Facebook, and all that other jazz, we're well above 50 million. So it's a nice little homegrown product that has grown globally, and we're very proud of that.
So let me ask you, because we've been talking about the advertising, and by the way, many of those 5 and 6 second ads now, you can't even skip them, right? If it's a 6 second ad, they're like, nah, you gotta watch this. Yep. How lucrative has it been? How lucrative is the advertising for your company?
Well, we are largely ad-supported. You know, we do have other licensing deals, but I've always been a believer in advertising. I think sometimes people throw out the baby with the bathwater. So let me give you a couple of stats. In 2019, YouTube generated $15 billion that year, and to compare that with CBS, NBC, Fox, and ABC, they each had about $3 to $6 billion. So already YouTube was just a behemoth. Wow. If you fast forward 2 years only, sure, we'll talk about the pandemic if you'd like to, but my point is this year, YouTube is on pace to double that to $30 billion. This isn't like, you know, growing revenues from $300,000 to $600,000. At this scale, that YouTube was already much bigger than every other broadcast player in the States, they're going to be doubling that to $30 billion. It's unheard of, right? I've always said that YouTube in many ways is more dominating in video than Google searches in search, and even Android is in mobile, and I think the proof is in the pudding. So we benefit because obviously we're a big channel, our content is viewed as brand safe, our content is also relatively long by YouTube standards. You know, our videos they're known for those top 10s, and you know, if a video is 12, 14 minutes, there is an opportunity to insert ads. We don't go crazy. We could insert up to 7 ads. I think we hold back and put 2 or 3 ads, depending on the length, but it is a lucrative model. But I think where you just have to be cautious is nothing is done overnight. You know, we've been at this since 2006. Obviously, I would say 2012-13 is when we had a bit of an inflection point. But when people come to me and say, hey, I want to launch a YouTube channel, I go, more power to you. You have to be on YouTube. But I also encourage people to look at the new platforms, you know, whether that's Snap or whether that's TikTok.
And can we just talk about production values for a second? Because the one thing that I find is striking, and I will say the one reason why I as well am watching more YouTube, is the stuff looks good. You know, Ash, you've been doing it for a while and very good editing, and you've got studio facilities. But that's one thing I'm noticing. You know, it seems like 10 years ago, 5 years ago even, the stuff on YouTube looked low quality. Now it looks better than ever. Is that a key here as to why YouTube's growing?
Of course. I think the reason why I've always said Netflix is more evolutionary versus YouTube being revolutionary is because YouTube has leveraged, you know, the mobile revolution, HD equipment and all that to really make the videos look better, which then it's amplified by the fact that traditional producers who always had higher production value are embracing the platform. YouTube has also worked with creators to give them best practices to make sure that their videos look better. So yeah, it's basically, you know, as you know, the title of my third book was the 10-year overnight success. It's the same thing. YouTube has been around for 15 years. This wasn't a surprise that came overnight out of nowhere. This is really the result of 15 years of a lot of patient, diligent work by YouTube and Google and the entire community to basically surpass television, and that's a fact now. YouTube has basically usurped television, and there's really no going back.
Is this one quick question for you, Ash? Is the secret sauce the algorithms? You know, I watch one electric car video and now I'm bombarded with electric cars. I watch one old David Letterman video, I'm bombarded by the old stuff. It worries me because I just want to say I know the people that search for a conspiracy theory get hit hard with more of those. But is the you know, you're going to say no, the algorithm not a secret sauce?
It's not that it's not a secret sauce, but I think you got to bear in mind that Google will always outsmart you. So if you try to outsmart Google and YouTube, that's not going to be a sustainable strategy. The real earnest answer is always listen to your audience, give them the kind of content that you're passionate about and they want, and just be honest with people's time. You know, people's time is really valuable, and if they see a headline, you got to respect that. Now, are there bad apples and bad actors? Of course, but our success really comes down to just wanting to serve our audience and our community, and I think that's why we've been, you know, one of the top channels now for a decade, which is kind of unheard of on YouTube, where everything changes very quickly.
Continued success, Ash, and it's always great talking about the industry with you. Thanks so much for coming on.